Hello, I'm Ari. Today I want to share two stories that together explain much of what we're seeing. First, the interview, very unusual and very revealing, with a Mossad agent who operated inside Iran during the 12-day war last year. And second, the Iranian regime's disinformation game, which is spreading strongly right now on social media, trying to sell victories with images that aren't what they claim to be. Ultimately, all of this ties to what's happening now. Alerts in Iran, the standoff between Washington and Tehran, and the United States deployment that's already visible here in Israel. Let's start first with the interview. Last night in Israel, an episode of UFDA Channel 12's investigative program with Ilana Dayan was aired. I tried in many ways to share the full interview with you, which is actually in Hebrew, but I couldn't find the complete version, so I'll share the details with you. And well, this whole matter. It's just that for the first time, a Mossad agent who participated in operations inside Iran sat in front of cameras. On the night of June 12th to 13th, 2025, during the 12-day war, the man was given the pseudonym Arash. Around 40 years old, he was born and raised in Iran, served in the army, and studied at an Iranian university. And his personal story partly explains why he crossed a line that for many would be unthinkable. He tells a story that has marked him since he was a child, when he was 11 years old. One night, his sister didn't come home. The family ended up at a police station, and according to him, his sister was arrested and beaten for taking off her hijab. Imagine that at 11 years old, seeing that the system can take someone out of their own home for something that, in any reasonable society, should be a matter of personal freedom. They managed to get her out, but that scar remained over time. Her family moves to the West. Arash says something important. The more he grew up, the more he felt that if he wanted to do something against that regime, he couldn't do it alone. And there was a very surreal moment. In the interview, he states that when he was about 30 years old, sitting in front of a computer, he searched the internet for how to contact the Israeli Mossad. He opened the page, prepared the message, and at the very moment of sending it, he froze. He says it was an extremely tough decision. In the interview, Ilana Dayan, the host of the program, asks him the obvious question: "Do you realize that you crossed the line?" And he answers, "Without embellishment, I crossed the line." But then he corrects an idea that is fundamental to him when they ask him, "Did you betray your country?" He separates Iran from the regime, and his logic is as follows. He says that Iran is my people. The regime is something else. Israel is not the enemy of my people, it is the enemy of my enemy. And this kind of phrase, you can love it or you can hate it, but it's an X-ray of how a part of Iranian society thinks, especially those who have had traumatic experiences with the system. The operational aspect is now more important than psychology. Arash stated on the show that he was recruited and trained for highly sensitive missions, and he claims that before the June 2025 campaign, he was sent to Iran, and that he ended up leading one of the teams in charge of internal attacks. And finally, the crucial night arrives, from June 12th to 13th. He describes it like this: "I was in a safe apartment, a safe house, ready to go out." He knew there was a big mission, but he didn't know exactly when or how until in the afternoon they were given the order. Okay, let's begin. They got into a vehicle camouflaged with a launching system in the car. He says everything was perfect, so well set up that no one could recognize it. In the part of the interview that follows, he shows that level of real stress. When they arrive at the area, he has to wait for a launch order for more than 2 hours. 2 hours is not a video game. It's not a movie. 2 hours. They're stuck in enemy territory, knowing that any strange movement, any checkpoint by the improvised regime, any suspicion could end in the worst-case scenario. He puts it very simply. It was terrible, and I was really scared. When the order finally comes, it's almost 3 in the morning. They set up the system, activate it, and fire. Arash says the missiles had cameras, and when they're fired, he can see the target. According to his account, it was a launcher ready to fire ballistic missiles at Israel, and they destroyed it. Afterwards, he says he calls the command to report something, like, "We did the job." And from the other side, they answer, "Yes, you did it," and he says the only thing he wanted to do was scream, "We did it," and look at the contrast. The man is on Israel's side, but he's Iranian. He's not telling this as a pro-Israel fanatic. He's telling it as someone who feels like he's attacking a regime, not its people. All right, and let's get into the second layer, which to me is the most important, because that night it was presented as a spectacular blow. Targeted eliminations, air defense strikes, key figure frustrations, internal attacks. Honestly, a high-level operational show. But when we talk about the nuclear program, a word comes up that carries weight. Fordow? Fordow. Is that facility dug under the mountain the crown jewel of the Iranian regime's enrichment program? And according to what is presented in the report, despite plans and ideas that were worked on for years within the security system, Fordow was a resolved target when at least the time came. It is even mentioned that there was a huge project with a biblical name, with gigantic resources, that at some point almost became the Mossad's main agenda. A former Mossad chief, Tamir Pardo, talks about the scale of the investment and how if the prime minister had told them to stop, they would have stopped, but it never stopped. Former director Yossi Cohen says he ended that operation when he took over, judging it unviable. And later, it is mentioned that with Debbie Barnea, it was reactivated. In other words, years of planning, years of work. But the Fordow problem was still a puzzle. And this, to make it easy to understand, means something very specific. You can have impressive successes in intelligence and operations, but there are strategic objectives that are literally on a different level. That's the reality. I'll pause to invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications to get updates on new videos. If you're new to my channel, know that here, Ari in Israel, I share with you current news about what's happening in Israel and what's going on in the region. Let's continue, because what I'm about to show you is the shameless audacity of the Iranian regime. Now, let's move on to the proposal. On social media, especially on X, posts began circulating claiming that a new Iranian satellite had captured recent images showing massive damage at Israel's Nevatim airbase during the 12-day war in June of last year. And they present it as a very specific account. In the posts, they claim an Iranian satellite captured recent images showing damage. June, the year when, if you look at it calmly and compare the location, those supposed images of Nevatim, the famous Israeli airbase in the Negev, actually match something else, with images available that you can see for yourself on Google Earth, and they are not from Israel. I ask you to look at them with me so you can clear up any doubts. I am right now in the Google Earth app. What you are seeing is the map of the Middle East. There you can see Israel on the left and on the right. Iran. If we zoom in on Iran, look at what we find here, just east of Tehran, the capital of Iran. We are inside the Sorki Hazar National Park complex, where we find an Iranian military base. And as you can see, the supposed images of the Israeli base are actually of this base east of Iran. And not only that, in this other image, which was also shared as the destroyed Nevatim base, it turns out to be the same Iranian base, just rotated. If we flip the image that was shared on social media, the supposed image taken by the Iranian satellite, we can clearly see that they are exactly the same structures from the Iranian base. So, what happened here? This is classic propaganda. They take real images of damage, but from their own facilities, it seems like a joke. They present them as if they were from Israel, and with that, they fuel the cycle on social media. And honestly, this seems like amateur stuff. If what they wanted was to create fake news, the obvious thing would have been to take images from the Israeli base and manipulate them with AI. Nowadays, it's possible, but for these geniuses, it was easier to use their own military bases hit during the war and sell them to the world. Like the result of the Iranian Iron Fist that destroyed the Israeli bases, which anti-Israel and anti-Jewish detractors quickly process and vomit on their social networks without stopping to check or verify in any way. And I know that some people will be bothered by what I'm saying, because there are people who enjoy any news that sounds like it's about Israel. It was destroyed, but the reality is clear, and I'd rather burst the bubble before people get carried away. This is very important right now because the atmosphere is so tense that it's the perfect ground for misinformation. War of nerves, anxiety. A lot of people looking for confirmation of what they already want to believe. So, please, be very careful with what circulates on social media, with what you see, and even more so, make sure to verify well what you share. Now, parallel to these two stories, in reality, big pieces are still moving here in the region. In Iran, reports indicate maximum alert and resource mobilization, while in the United States, the situation is becoming increasingly serious, no longer just tension. From the Pentagon, it was communicated that the negotiations to reach an agreement with Iran basically crashed. They've basically failed. According to what Columbia Broadcasting System News reported, the attempts to speed up direct talks between Washington and Tehran did not succeed. They even mentioned that the head of Israeli military intelligence, Major General Finder, was in Washington earlier this week for meetings at the Pentagon, the CIA, and the White House. In other words, maximum coordination. And when those doors open, it's because very serious scenarios are being evaluated, so be careful. It's not to say that a total war will start tomorrow, but it is necessary to understand that the options are on the table. Things are moving toward entering a direct conflict. That's the situation right now, and here in Israel, you can feel those movements. In fact, today itself, a United States destroyer docked at the port of Eilat in southern Israel, as part of the deployment of United States forces in the Eilat region. So you can get your bearings quickly, it's in the Red Sea, at the southern tip of the country, bordering Egypt. For you to see a United States destroyer docking there, right now, it's nothing more than for strategic reasons and for positioning and operational deployment of resources. At the same time, the Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces Lieutenant General Eyal Samir was talking about something that people sometimes don't understand. Victory doesn't start with a missile, it starts with logistics. He literally said that the operational capability of all branches depends on the Technology and Logistics Directorate of Israel, and he described it as the nation's complete safety net. In other words, without fuel, without spare parts, without ammunition, without maintenance, without transportation, without communication, there is no army that can hold out no matter how brave it is. And when you hear that in the current context, you understand the subtext. We are preparing for a long scenario, for complex and multiple scenarios. So what does all this leave us with? First, Arash's interview confirms something that had been suspected for years, but now it's told in the first person. Operating inside Iran with a level of penetration that honestly is impressive. Second, that same interview also exposes limitations, because when the focus shifts to Fordow, to the most protected core, it becomes clear that not everything was as simple as already being solved. Third, the Iranian regime is playing that digital propaganda card hard, even using their own wounds to invent wounds in Israel, and as a way to boost their already fallen image among their regional allies. And fourth, the region is in a phase where every move, a destroyer in Eilat, meetings in Washington, speeches, internal alerts in Iran, all of this adds a lot of pressure. The question is, what will happen in the immediate future as we now get ready to enter this weekend? I think the key point isn't just whether there will be an attack or not. The key point is how perception shifts. What does Iran think the United States will do? What does the United States think Iran will do? And what does Israel think? What can or can't it do on its own? In the end, he's the one facing the enemies next door alone. That game of perceptions in the Middle East is where many escalations are born. So in the next few hours or days, we need to be very alert. Thank you for joining me. If you found this analysis helpful, leave me a like, share this video, and subscribe so you don't miss the next update. See you. Subscribe.